Of all the decisions Vivziepop has made over the years, the best one by far is creating the Helluva Boss shorts. Helluva Boss has been heavily criticized ever since Season 2 came out for its failure to live up to its original premise of imps going to Earth and assassinating people, along with it failing at fleshing out some of its cast in any meaningful way. Well, the Helluva Boss shorts were the response to those critiques, and although they may not all be good, when I watched these shorts, I don't think I have ever been reminded of Helluva Boss's glory days throughout all of Season 2 more than I did with these shorts. I'm going to go over a summary of the events that happen within each of these shorts as I go through them, so if you ever want to get right to the review, skip to the time that will be displayed in the top right hand corner of the screen at the beginning of each summary. Hell's Bells. The short begins with Millie waiting at the bus stop for her sister Sally Mae's visit from the Wrath Ring to the Pride Ring. Once she arrives, we get a montage of them going to a spa, buying clothes, playing at an arcade owned by Wally Wackford, and dancing at a club. Once they are finished, they go to a rooftop to talk about how great the day was, and Sally Mae gets upset at how much more fun the Pride Ring is and how Millie left her behind when she moved away. Sally then laments how much she misses spending time with Millie, and Millie cheers her up by bringing up the point that Sally is always welcome to visit more often now that their brothers have gotten older and don't need to be looked after as much. The short ends with Millie and Sally in the apartment watching TV as Moxie gets back home and is happy to see them having fun together as he retires to the bedroom. Although there are 4 returning characters in this short, only 2 actually matter, those being Millie and Sally Mae. Millie is perfectly fine in this short. There never was a moment where I was interested by anything she did or said, but I never found her annoying or out of character, and it is always nice to get to learn more about her background and life before IMP, but unfortunately, all of Millie's background development is centered around Sally Mae, who is a really boring character. I like the idea of Millie having a sibling who ties back to her roots, but Sally Mae feels like a character who was written to develop Millie first and be a character second, and it is painfully evident as nothing is interesting about her outside of the fact that she is Millie's sister. I don't mind the fact that Sally Mae is an accessory character, but for a viewer to be interested in what the accessory character's purpose is, you have to make that character interesting in the first place, and Sally Mae fails at that task. As a result, the entire purpose of this short, which is fleshing out Millie's relationship with her sibling, while revealing a little bit more about her past, isn't captivating at all, which makes it hard to enjoy this short. This isn't helped by the fact that beyond it being an uncaptivating entry, it's riddled with other irritating issues, such as the dialogue feeling extremely stiff and poorly paced, making a lot of the scenes come across as awkward, and the climax of the short where Millie and Sally get into an argument feeling extremely forced because it came out of nowhere. If there had been one scene earlier that foreshadowed that Sally was unhappy with Millie having left, this scene could have worked. But throughout the entire short, we only ever see her having fun, which makes her sudden outburst all that more confusing and unnecessary. Hell's Bells represents exactly what the Helluva Boss shorts should and needed to be by expanding on the world building and adding some additional character development for characters that are underdeveloped, but no matter how well-meaning this short was intended to be, the execution fell completely flat in almost every way, with the intention of developing Millie and Sally Mae being the only real good thing about it, leaving us with a short that may have fulfilled its purpose, but did so in such a sloppy and unrefined way that I consider this short to be a failure, as instead of making Millie and Sally more interesting characters like it set out to do, it only made me feel like I wasted 6 minutes of my time. Mission Antarctica. The short begins with Blitz, Moxie, and Millie going to Antarctica for a job where the client was killed by a man-eating beast. The trio makes their way to a nearby research station where they find the mangled corpses of the client's co-workers, and as they investigate, a giant seal begins to charge at them, but before it can commit any harm, Moxie shoots and successfully kills it. Thinking that the job is finished, Blitz prepares to leave, but Millie notices that the seal has scars and bite marks all over its body, and deduces that the seal wasn't attacking them, but rather running away from something that was attacking it. The trio looks around and sees a penguin covered in blood looking down on them, which Moxie promptly kills, alerting dozens more who charge towards them to attack. The imps take cover inside the station and try to teleport back to Hell using the Asmodean crystal that stole escaped Blitz, but Blitz can't figure out how to make it work. Millie brings up that since it's a crystal from lust, it has to be sexually stimulated to work, but since Blitz is inexperienced at being gentle, he can't make it work. Moxie then voluntarily begins licking the crystal using techniques Millie taught him, creating a portal for them to escape through. The short ends with Millie throwing a match through the portal at a punctured gas canister, exploding the research station, and killing all but one of the penguins. The characters in this episode are mostly well balanced. Blitz is his usual self, and as per usual, he gets the most focus, but not in a way where he steals attention from the other characters. More so, he elevates everyone else in the short and bounces off them in a natural way that just makes him, Moxie, and Millie more entertaining. That being said, as usual, most of his banter is with Moxie, and Millie is once again left as the third wheel, as besides the ending where she blows up the penguins, she doesn't do anything in this short, which I can't say surprises me, but that's not an excuse to not acknowledge that everything that Millie did and said in this short could have just as easily been done or said by Moxie, and that is a flaw that is well deserving of scrutiny. As for Moxie though, he's just about the same as usual. He's the comedic relief who often gets humiliated in some way, and although I don't have a problem with it in this short, there is an argument to be made that the Moxie torture gag is starting to run its course. But outside of the characters, everything else in this short is surprisingly good. The humor is entertaining enough, and I found the joke about the penguins being evil because they say slurs to be genuinely one of the funniest punchlines I have seen out of Helluva Boss in a long time. I also found the subversion of expectations with the seal to be fairly clever, as it added a nice little plot twist to keep the short more engaging, which in turn probably helped the pacing a lot. Mission Antarctica is a good piece of VivziePop entertainment. I won't say it's spectacular or anything, but between the humor being good, the pacing being about as perfect as can be for a less than 5-minute entry, and the setting taking place in Antarctica, which created a visual contrast with its white and blues in comparison to the overabundance of red we usually get in Helluva Boss, that made this short one of the most visually unique settings we have ever seen in this show. This short is very solid, with its only real flaws being ones that are less unique to it and more of a problem with the series overall, with how it handles its supporting characters, but even then those problems are never overly evident or overtly irritating to the point where it hampers the quality of this short to a severe degree. I'm not sure if it is because I have gotten so used to Helluva Boss annoying me in some way and this short not doing so, or the fact that Stolas is absent and never mentioned, but I find Mission Antarctica to be an underappreciated gem that adequately delivered on more than enough aspects for me to find myself enjoying Helluva Boss, and that's a feat that deserves recognition and praise. Wee Boo Boo. The short begins with Blitz going solo on a job to kill a college girl named Emberlyn. But once he enters her bedroom and tries to stab her, she is protected by a magical force field deflecting his attack. Blitz asks Emberlyn what her pendant is, and she says that it's merch from an anime she watches before she notices that Blitz is a demon and becomes obsessed with him. Throughout the rest of the short, Emberlyn flirts with Blitz, convincing herself that he's in love with her and wants to take her to hell so they can be together forever, and voluntarily lets him kill her. The short ends with Blitz back in the office and seeing Emberlyn outside the window, who found him through the billboard that is advertising him in IMP. Of any entry of Helluva Boss, I think Wee Boo Boo might have some of my favorite character interactions of any of them. You see, Blitz's defining character trait above all else is that he is crass and obscene. Those are the central traits that make Blitz so enjoyable to watch, and to see him confront someone who reflects those character traits back at him through a cringy lens without any method of him resorting to violence puts him in what I dare say is the most interesting situation we have seen him in since season 2 began, if not ever. There are times when we have seen Blitz being uncomfortable before, but never in a way like this, where there's no melodramatic undertone and he's not in any real danger of being harmed. It's just Blitz witnessing and reacting to someone who makes him so unbearably uncomfortable, and it's pure comedic gold. And it's all thanks to Emberlyn, a character who is so obscene that she makes Blitz look tame in comparison. This character is such a hilariously accurate embodiment of the worst of any fandom that I was actually taken aback by how blatant of a call out she is towards not only the type of people who are some of the biggest funders of VivziePop shows, but in some ways, she is a parody of VivziePop herself, which is a level of self-awareness that I really did not expect to see from Vivian Madrano, and I would be lying if I said I don't respect her more for allowing this character to be characterized the way she is. Blitz and Emberlyn bounce off each other so well in Wee Boo Boo, and it's produced by far one of the funniest things to ever come out of Helluva Boss. Your enjoyment of this short may vary depending on your tolerance to purposefully cringe humor, but if you can appreciate Weeaboo for what its intention is, this short is so funny. Between it making fun of fandoms, Blitz's hysterical reactions, the detailed background visual gags, and the timing and delivery of almost every joke being perfect, I haven't laughed this hard at something from Helluva Boss since the first half of season 1. And if you are the type of person who has ever liked Helluva Boss at any point, I would recommend Weeaboo as a must-watch, as its humor is refreshingly varied but familiar enough for it to not feel like a written by Vanitymoth meme, while still feeling like it's Helluva Boss's comedic style at its best, without being hindered by any aspect that has decreased the quality of the series over recent years. Mission Chupacabras. The short begins with Blitz, Moxie, and Millie traveling to Mexico to kill a target, but once they arrive, they are immediately interrupted by a herd of goats that belong to the target. Blitz quickly becomes upset and begins attacking the goats, alerting the target to the trio's presence, who mistakes them for chupacabras and begins to shoot at them. Having lost the element of surprise, Blitz calls for a retreat, and while Moxie and Millie escape, a goat falls on Blitz from an explosion he caused, which knocks him unconscious. He awakens in a cage, being shown off by the target for whoever pays a small fee, and when Blitz tries to attack or escape, he realizes the target took his gun and the Asmodean crystal, leaving him with nothing to escape with or call for backup. Shortly after, the dorks show up after hearing about there being a real chupacabra, but because they have no money, the target won't let them see Blitz. Meanwhile, Blitz talks one of the goats into attacking the dorks, goading them into insulting the goat, which in turn angers the target, who points Blitz's gun at them, but because it's a gun made in hell, it burns his hand, causing him to fire a bullet accidentally, which ricochets into a windmill, which then falls onto the target, killing him. The goat then brings Blitz back the crystal, allowing him to escape, and he fires into the air, stirring the herd of goats into a frenzy, scaring off the dorks and the rest of the crowd. Blitz thanks the goat that helped him, declaring it to be an IMP VIP, and leaves back to hell, and the short ends with the goat that helped Blitz becoming the demonic leader of the rest of the goats. The only real character in this episode is Blitz, and he's pretty typical. Blitz in this short is in no way bad, but he certainly isn't all that remarkable, and he doesn't do or say anything that we haven't seen before, and with him being the only real character, just like how Sally Mae was the focus of Hell's Bells, which in turn was heavily worsened because she's a boring character, this entire short becomes very standard because the focus of this short is Blitz, and he's pretty standard. That being said, we do get the return of the dorks, and between this short and their most recent appearance in Full Moon, they are way better utilized in this short, and reminded me how entertaining they can be, as they are comedy relief antagonists who don't rely on swearing or cruelty to be captivating when they are on screen. For example, their bickering over who has to pay to see Blitz was by no means comedic genius, but in a series where every punchline is related to murder, swearing, or sex, this little argument was entertaining because it was something different and refreshing, which are the adjectives that I would use to describe the dorks in Mission Chupacabras. So where Blitz is stagnant, the dorks excel, balancing out the cast of this episode to be slightly above average overall, and I don't have any problem with that. But beyond that, I don't really have much to say about Mission Chupacabras. It's not all that memorable or impressive, but it's in no way a bad short and is really just perfectly average. The premise is decent enough, the pacing is decent enough, Blitz is exactly what you expect him to be, the humor isn't bad, but there was never a point that made me laugh, and besides the goat being adorable, the dorks are really the only thing Mission Chupacabras does beyond average, but because they aren't a large focus of the short, their influence can only do so much with the limited screen time they have to make this short anything other than average. Overall, the Helluva Boss shorts writing and quality can be a mixed bag, but even then, they are fun to watch. They did start with an underwhelming and discouraging premiere with Hell's Bells, which while it did have good intentions, ended up just being one of the many examples of the series mishandling Millie, but from then on the rest of the shorts were amusing and focused, and I think it's due to the short runtime of these shorts that ended up being the quality that the full-length episodes are lacking. They are focused. They have an idea and they focus on executing that idea while making every minute entertaining above all else. Since these shorts have such a small runtime, there's simply never time to waste on pointless B-plots or characters having spotlight moments only for them to do nothing of value, and most of all, they don't have time for the exhausting melodrama that Season 2 has become infamous for, with the exception of Hell's Bells, and that's the worst short by far. It's not that I'm saying that Helluva Boss can't have a story and should never take itself seriously, but if these shorts prove anything, not counting Hell's Bells, it's that when the comedy and entertainment are prioritized over drama and writing that is trying too hard to be emotionally deep, Helluva Boss can still be an entertaining and fun show to watch. When Helluva Boss was still in its first season, many fans fell in love with the premise the show advertised itself to have. A series about 3 imps going to the human world and finding themselves in comedically bizarre situations, and as far as I'm concerned, that is what these shorts are, and what Helluva Boss should have always been.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell.